Blitz is defined as a sudden, savage attack. It is indeed all this. The effect is sure. The premise is simple. It's a basic, primal confrontation, man to man. No excuses are offered, none accepted.
Welcome to the latest edition of Longhorn Blitz with Horns247.com.
Looks like a radio station.
Now, here are your hosts, lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers,
Pure athlete, yeah.
I transcend race, hombre.
Matt Butler,
I don't talk, man. I back it up.
And we are chock full of that, man.
Damn right.
and Jeff Howe.
It's still real to me, damn it.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
If you're gonna blitz, come strong, or don't come at all.
Coming strong with another edition of Longhorn Blitz with Horns247.com. I am Jeff Howe. Today we wrap up the spring. Spring football seemed like it came and went quickly.
It did. Football always does, right?
Yeah.
That's why we miss football when it's gone. It comes and goes really fast, man.
Football's like a wedding, man. You spend so long getting prepared for something that is over before you realize.
I like that. It's a pretty nice analogy.
Having been there, Rod, you'll be there at some point, I would imagine.
It's one day I'll be there. One day soon, in case my girlfriend's listening. Yeah.
One of these days.
One day soon.
But all we can do now, we've got to look forward to those milestones, which are Big 12 Media Days in July, and then September 2nd against Maryland. That's when the real thing gets kicked off. But we're going to talk about these 15 practices Texas had under Tom Herman and a few other things relating to the Longhorn football brand, if you will, on this edition of Longhorn Blitz with Horns247.com. As I said, my name is Jeff Howe. Going to be taking you through this adventure on both Facebook Live and our podcast. If you're an iTunes subscriber, thank you so much for subscribing. If you're not an iTunes subscriber, you want to get the podcast, just go search Longhorn Blitz on iTunes. Subscribe. It costs you absolutely nothing.
Free 99.
Free 99 is the best price in the world. That's what it costs you at Horns247.com. Also, always got that 7-day free trial going on. All the spring evaluation period started right now. If you missed anything during spring football, you can go back, get my takes and information throughout spring ball. Bobby Burton also has the same stuff in terms of takes and insider information that we get here and there. The Eyes of Texas feature always drops on Tuesdays. We had a two-parter this week, one dealing with some recruiting stuff, some team stuff. I looked at the quarterback battle in that piece, which I'm 99.9% sure we're going to talk about today on the show. Garrett Callahan also had news on a basketball transfer, and then E.J. Holland dropped a second part of the Eyes this week dealing with some football recruiting stuff. So the Eyes of Texas feature, you get that on Tuesday. Mondays, I've got my 3 things I think, 3 things I know column, scatter shooting on Friday, all that fun stuff at Horns247.com.
I like that 3 things I think and 3 things I know. It's pretty good.
I've just decided to start doing that. It's kind of a good piece to kick off.
I like it. I've been I think 3 of them. You done like 3 or 4?
3 or 4, yeah, something like that.
They've been pretty good actually.
I appreciate that, Rod.
Not that you don't do good work on time. I said that like
everything else sucks.
Good.
But I like that.
I meant like that specifically just to mention one of the many things you do.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. So get over to the site right now. So let me go ahead and bring in the rest of the team. He is the master of the soundboard, the drop machine extraordinaire, the man behind the glass, who is engulfed right now in the NBA playoffs. Matt Butler. Matt, is this your pardon the pun, but is this your money time of the year?
Yes, the playoffs definitely, I would say, is one of my strengths just because it's such of a narrowed field and it's sort of, there's no fake, just players getting a few minutes out of nowhere or numbers that come out of garbage time. There's a lot of competitiveness. And then, like right now, it looks like Kevin Durant is doubtful tonight. So doing a lot of research looking at the Warriors from back at the time whenever KD was out earlier this year. A lot of Longhorns in basketball, though, in the NBA right now. Counted them up last night. It's like 8 of them because you don't even count the Sheldon McClellans or Isaiah Thomases or Isaiah Taylors who are on NBA rosters
with the Rockets,
in the playoffs. Exactly. But then you add on all the other guys. I actually saw Isaiah Taylor. He was with Game 1 with Houston, goes down to Game 3 of the whatever D-League finals, and then now is back up for Game 2 with Houston. So he's playing both playoffs.
Man, yeah, no, I saw that. I'm a Rockets fan, so I'm probably the only one who knows that. But yeah, I saw that he was actually on the roster. I don't know what kind of contract it is, but yeah, I mean, apparently they like Isaiah Taylor, so good for him.
They cut Bobby Brown. Not Bobby Brown. It was Gary Payton Jr. for him.
Yeah, Bobby Brown.
Yeah, they have some weird names.
They do
on
have
that
a
team,
Bobby
man.
Brown. Yeah, remember he's the one that
Johnny Gill playing the 4 for him.
That'd be funny.
No, it is funny. They
got Nene playing the fight.
What did Bobby Brown
Thank you,
do?
Rod, for picking up the new
Didn't
edition.
he do something with the Wall of China, the Great Wall of China? Bobby Brown, he like disrespected it or something. Somewhere you're not
who knows?
supposed to. I think he like peed on it or something. Don't hold me to that. I think it was something very disrespectful. I'm not sure. Yeah.
The man knows about
can
New
see that very
Edition,
easily.
all kinds of.
No, look it up. I'm
his
serious. I'm
musical,
gonna
his
Google it
musical
right now.
tastes span the spectrum, if you will.
Oh, yeah, no
he's a
doubt.
Renaissance man.
Now Bobby Brown was it's good music.
Yes, no doubt. That's why we call him the Renaissance man here on the show. But more importantly, he is our lockdown corner here on the show, as he was on the 40 Acres when he was a 2002 UT All-American, 2002 semifinalist for the Jim Thorpe Award, 4th-round draft choice of the New York Giants in 2003. Spent his NFL career with the Giants, Lions, Bears, Bucks, Broncos, and a year with the Hamilton Tiger Cats of the CFL. What you got, Rod?
He wrote on the Great Wall of China. I apologize. Sorry.
I was about to say,
that was wrong. Say urinated. I apologize.
Wrote,
I was wrong.
urinated.
In theory,
He
though,
wrote
you
on it.
Can
So,
write on it while
yes.
urinating too.
no. I was wrong about the urination. I apologize. He wrote on the Great Wall
And
of
I
China.
thought you were
Okay.
talking about
I
like the
thought-
musician.
I knew
Bobby
he
Brown did that.
disrespected it somehow. I just didn't know how. Okay, there you go. Sorry.
There you go. Now
I want to
everybody-
clarify.
Now everybody can rest easy knowing your Bobby Brown trivia as it relates to the Great Wall
And he
of China.
autographed it. I have a photo of it. It's hilarious. It's like you practicing your
autographed the
autographs.
Great Wall
Even
of
has like a
China.
number and stuff. It's hilarious.
But when he was done with football, he got himself back to Austin, Texas, in the 40 Acres where he got his degree. If he had his T-ring, he'd wear it proudly. He's
Very
a
true.
card-carrying member of DBU, number 21 in your program, number 1 in your hearts. Rod Babers.
What's going on, brother?
Rod, did you make it out to DKR on Saturday?
Yes, I did make it out to DKR.
There you go.
Yeah, I didn't stay the entire time, but I did.
Give
make
Rod
it
a
to
hand,
DKR.
folks.
Yeah.
Rod doesn't make it
Well,
out.
I mean, no, I thought I would go out there and support the team. So yeah, I went out there and watched the game. It was good. It was a good environment, though.
Did you run into any of your former teammates out there?
No, I actually watched it with friends from the stands, so I didn't go hang out on the field and all that. That's where all the guys were.
So,
Man of the
Rod,
people.
we'll go ahead and start with you. General
sometimes.
impressions of the spring game.
Well, I gotta tell you, I was pleasantly surprised. I like the way they did it. It was a weird format. Maybe that defense could score points and all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was cool. I knew Tom Herman would put on a good show. He's a bit of a showman. He likes to put on a good show. And I thought they put on a good show with the former players involved in activities with students, all that kind of stuff. All that was really, really cool. And in terms of the team, I think it starts at quarterback. I liked what I saw out of Shane Buechele. I think Shane Buechele is clearly in the lead. I think he's going to start game 1 for the Longhorns. I know people have been debating that, and there's still a competition. Tom Herman has acknowledged that. I understand that. That's great, and I think there are a lot of good reasons, a lot of upside to keeping the quarterback competition open. But from what I've seen, just the eye test alone, which is what spring games are all about, eye test, Shane Buechele is clearly ahead of Sam Ehlinger right now. As well he should be, because he's already had a year on the 40 Acres. Both those guys are new to this system. So I think that's a big topic of discussion, and I feel like Shane Buechele is still right now there's some distance in between he and Sam Ehlinger. And in the offseason, I don't know if that's going to widen. Sam Ehlinger has natural leadership qualities. He's one of those guys, you know what I mean? So in the offseason, it's all about your leadership as an individual player, because the coaches aren't there to really designate those roles. You take on those roles. You kind of take ownership. It's kind of this Lord of Flies mentality in the offseason, because there is no real regulation from coaches. So we'll see in the offseason if they can win over the locker rooms and win over the respect of their teammates, and then if there's some distance in the competition. Right now, I think it's Shane Buechele, a Kim Kardashian, Nicki Minaj, Serena Williams size, but I do believe both players will end up playing next year and contributing next year. Both scholarship quarterbacks will.
You can say.
Whether by design or necessity, it's happened the last, I don't know, it on the 40 Acres, it's happened basically last 6 years or something like that. It's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. I don't know how, and I hope it's not by something bad, some bad reason, meaning somebody getting benched or somebody getting hurt, but it's going to happen. It happens. It's been happening more and more on the 40 acres. I think the trend will continue somehow.
And you said badunkadunk size, that you could just start calling it an Ehlinger instead of a Kardashian one because he has a rather Centauri trunk that we've talked about.
Yes, he does. He is Centaur. I call him he is. He looks like he's built like a Centaur. Anyway, but I think that's part of the reason he's going to play because that's why he's a great runner too, great dual threat quarterback. So I think that people are freaking out about if its competition is over, then Sam Mellinger, he's not going to get a chance to play and all that kind of stuff. No, I think Sam Mellinger is going to play. I think that's why Tom Herman wants the competition open as it is. Also, good pitch to graduate transfer quarterbacks to say, whoa, our competition's still open, man. Mm-hmm. We ain't named no starter, man.
I think that's part of it too. Yeah.
Come on, man. Come on to Texas, man. We ain't named no starter.
Before we get kind of your general thoughts from the spring game, I'll throw this out there as it relates to the quarterback position. I think anybody that's still holding on to the hope that Sam Ehlinger is going to redshirt, go ahead and just let that go right now.
It's over now, man.
He's going to play.
I wish he could redshirt though, but it ain't happening.
But you don't have that luxury right now.
Yeah, you can't.
And we could sit here debating why and go through why, wax poetic on, your quarterback takes. You go through and look at it. Your quarterback take from the class of 2013 is now gone out of the program, Tyrone Swoops, which wouldn't it be nice if Tyrone Swoops was coming back in 2017 as a fifth-year senior? You wouldn't need a grad transfer quarterback. Tyrone Swoops would be your backup.
And that's where that cycle of redshirting could continue the way that you saw the cycle of redshirting sort of start with the Mac Brown era.
You redshirted Gerard Hurd, but now he's playing wide receiver.
Yeah.
Your two quarterback takes in 2015 are no longer in the program. Mm-hmm. So now you're not in a bad place because you've got two guys who are capable of playing the position competently.
No, it's a competition now, but you still are short bodies. You need bodies.
Yes.
You just need bodies there.
And Sam Ehlinger is going to play. Even if you bring in a grad transfer, he's going to play because Malik Zaire included. I don't see a graduate transfer candidate out there right now that can come in and take this job away from Shane Buechele. That's a better option than what Texas has right now.
So you don't think there's a graduate transfer they could bring in that would give them enough confidence to redshirt Sam Ehlinger?
No. And I'll throw Malik Zaire in that too because when you look at Malik Zaire's career numbers and the production, it's not that much different than the sample you've got with Shane Buechele. It's over a longer period of time, but in terms of snaps, in terms of actual game footage you have to break down, there's not that much that separates those two, honestly. So then you'd have to look at it, okay, if you're going to go with one, wouldn't you go with the guy that's been here from day one with this staff, that's spent a whole spring digesting the playbook, that is bought into your culture, that can handle the offense, that can play the position competently? Tom Herman and Tim Beck don't know anything about Malik Zaire right now other than what they would watch on video and what they would get from talking to people close to him or people at Notre Dame or however they want to go about researching Malik Zaire. Yeah. And I throw Malik Zaire out there because he's the biggest name, and I think that's only an option for Texas anyway if the Florida thing doesn't work out for him, which Florida's got that weird thing about there's that SEC rule where if you take a graduate transfer and they don't graduate, then you're prohibited from taking them for a certain window. Florida's still in that window. They're trying to see if that rule's going to get overturned or whatever by the SEC later this spring. So I don't know how that's going to work. But the bottom line is Shane Buechele is the number one guy for this job, and we'll talk about the quarterback's performances specifically, but as we go to Matt to get his thoughts on the spring game, I don't see a scenario right now where someone other than Shane Buechele is the starting quarterback for this football team on September 2nd.
Agreed.
And from what we saw on Saturday, it sort of would say if there was some scenario where you do, it would only be in a best-case scenario because we saw the accuracy. We saw everything you wanted to see from Buechele. So you can just assume, considering that you saw him as a young player, continue to develop, and if somehow somebody like Ehlinger can catch up, it sounds like, to compete, then not only do you have them two competing with one another, but it sounds like you have two very efficient, very good young quarterbacks that would only be a good situation, very different than where, say, Texas was when you had quote-unquote competition, say, 3 or 2 years ago, where it's sort of, the best bad idea, as we call the Argo principle. Instead, you may be flipping it and then hoping you'll just be able to build depth once you can get possibly a third quarterback in. But it also shows you how frail it is that despite just one snap, and we saw Buechele playing through an injury last year, one snap could leave you with just a freshman quarterback that should be in high school right now also. So you need as many reps possible for those two guys.
Get anything else on the spring game, Matt?
Wide receivers are freaks. I mean, there wasn't much that stood out to me other than, I mean, you got to see Tonio Carter look pretty good out there, and you had some good flashes of defensive players, but the things that stood, I mean, Colin Johnson's exactly what you sort of wish and you wanted, and we talk about the skill positions at Texas not really producing in the past decade as you had seen before, and right now, when you look at a couple of those guys, it looks like you either have already an NFL-ready guy or guys that if they maximize can become NFL guys, and that's something that Texas fans, I mean, outside of Marquise Goodwin, who was a track take back in 2009, and you have Shipley and Quan, I mean, it's been a long time since you produced some real outside talent in the NFL.
Texas probably hasn't been this deep at wide receiver since Roy, BJ, and Sloan were on the 40 acres.
Yeah.
Like this deep. Now, I know they have, obviously, I'm not saying Jordan and Quan weren't awesome. Those guys were awesome. Jordan is arguably the greatest wide receiver, in my opinion, in the history of Texas football.
Most prolific duo.
But that's kind of top heavy. They were just elite, wide receivers and an elite wide receiver duo. But you're talking about top to bottom. When at one point, hell, I believe Roy Williams and like Limas Swede, wasn't Limas Swede in that group too? Like at late when
Limas, yeah.
What was that?
Limas was a redshirt freshman in 03.
03, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, so I think Roy left. His last year was 04.
I guess that was his redshirt year.
He left his 04. So, you know what I mean? Like, there was a time there. I can't go look at all the rosters from like, I don't know, like 02, 04, something like that, where Texas had a lot of good wide receivers, just really deep at wide receiver talent, mostly stocked because of that Roy, BJ, and Sloan class. I think now, and you go back to big, freakish wide receivers too. Man, Texas has like three or four guys that are over 6', they're 6'3" and over. You know what I mean? Like, and
it reminds me of your secondaries, the way that you just were saying. The depth is there, and then they're all freakier and longer than the ones ahead of them.
And that doesn't even include the track speed of guys like John Burt, who is kind of just a freak on the outside by himself. And so it's easy for a lot of guys to kind of get lost in the shuffle. You almost forget about them at wide receiver deep down. So it's even that to me is more of a compliment as to Tom Herman's view of Gerard Hurley wide receiver, because they don't need Gerard Hurley wide receiver. And they really don't. They got so much talent there. They are loaded there at wide receiver. Like not that he's not great there.
Yeah.
Right.
But they really don't. I mean, it's like a luxury to have him there. Out of necessity, you would think like, I'm going to think about moving him at quarterback a little bit because we have so much talent there. I think that's just a compliment to the upside Tom Herman sees. And we saw it in spring game. It's easy to see that. I mean, it got tied for the lead in receiving touchdowns last year, just making that transition. But it's just an interesting conversation that, loaded at wide receiver. No, we're doubling down. I mean, that to me, I think was one of the most impressive things. The down the field passing attack of Tom Herman too is going to work well. Maybe he's just doing that because of the wide receiver talent he has.
Yeah.
But man, it's a vertical passing game.
Right.
Like it is not a lot of kind of underneath passing. Like, I mean, maybe they'll change once they get the running backs into the fold. They do get a tight end. That's why you really didn't see the offense. The tight end position is really crucial for this offense.
I like you said, just get a tight end.
Yeah, he's the tight end is the bridge between the pro and the spread, the philosophy they talk about. So you didn't have that. You didn't have the running backs. But what I did like is that vertical passing game with those wide receivers. Man, they went downfield and challenged the defensive backs. Now that was impressive. That to me was really impressive.
And the way that they even showed the versatility of those receivers in other ways. Like in the first, 15 plays, you saw guys like Duvernay throwing the ball downfield or Foreman in the backfield. Like you saw there that you're going to be open to any new ideas, and you may see a lot of things you've never seen before, very inventive on offense on ways to get these guys the ball, which makes me think that Gerard Hurd can be used in more ways than just being your traditional receiver as a multifaceted weapon, maybe unleashing his, horizontal speed and then using the ability to throw within the plays in offense. So it would be a pretty fun one to watch.
A lot of misdirection, a lot of funk too, pre-snap motion.
Okay, let's go ahead and go there. I was going to talk about quarterbacks, but you brought that up, Rod. I don't want to lose that thought. So when you talk about that aspect of it, when we sat here in December and January and talked about what could this offense look like, by the time we get to the spring game, and even more so when you get into the season, you get to the Maryland game, and hopefully by the time you start Big 12 play, what's this offense going to look like? And in talking to people that have kind of had ties to that U of H program, have observed Tom Herman for a long time, man, it sounded a lot like what we saw from Brian Harsin to an extent, with a lot of motions, heavy use of the tight end.
Good point.
You want to run the ball. When you do take shots, it's going to be off play action deep down the field. You want to be able to set. Basically, your run game is going to serve a purpose. That's to open up something. You want to exploit something in the defense. You want to hammer home that inside zone, because the minute you see that safety kind of creep up on that side of the play, boom, you hit him over the top. Everything is kind of calculated, and I felt like Tom Herman was Brian Harsin, but more aggressive, basically. And that's a very watered down version of what we're talking about.
No, there's a good bridge there. Major Applewhite's the bridge.
Right,
I agree with that.
But it's kind of a watered down version of Brian Harsin. And Tom Herman's more willing to take risks.
The use of the backs, too, like Brian Harsin did. Brian Harsin liked to bring his backs in on the passing game,
return to the screen game.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm picking up what you're putting down. I agree.
A lot of it's similar, and I think that's what we saw. We saw some funk. Like Matt, you brought it up.
We call it funk. That is a Brian Harsin term, by the way. It's pre-snap motion, but he calls it funk. I just liked it.
The first play of the spring game, so technically the first play of the Tom Herman is Devin Duvernay throwing a pass.
Yeah, it's a reverse pass. Yeah.
Right. So I thought that was kind of fun, but you see this offense and you start to see, okay, that's what this offense is going to do. It's going to be an offense, if you think about it the way you think of a Harsin offense.
See Harsin and a Greg Davis involved there too, because Greg Davis roots. That's amazing.
Well, no, I mean Major Applewhite's the bridge. Who's the guy that he's worked with the most in his career? It's Tom Herman and Brian Harsin. Like it totally aligns perfectly that it would make sense that Herman, one removed, just like you do the degrees of skis, just one removed on both sides of Applewhite are those two coaches.
So if you look at this Texas offense, you look at all the elements of it. I like that. I think that when we see this thing rolling, you're going to see a lot of what you saw with Brian Harsin. We kind of saw that some in the spring game, just in terms of the two main points of a Brian Harsin offense were maximizing your personnel grouping. In other words, you can have two running backs on the field, and depending on those skill sets, I could be in 11 personnel. I could be in, 20 personnel. I could be in you can do a number of different things, and depending on the skill sets of your wide receivers, basically you're maximizing that group you've got out there. You shouldn't have to substitute if you've got the right guys on the field. You can mix and match and move those pieces around on a given drive as you need to. So the formation variation was one aspect of the Brian Harsin offense that I really liked a lot, and the other one was the ability to everything you do has a purpose, and that's kind of the overarching theme of the Tom Herman era to this point. Everything you do has a purpose. Yeah, you're not just And again, we're gonna compare and contrast because that's all we have to go on. We did the same thing when Charlie got hired with Mac Brown. I felt like guys worked hard during the Charlie Strong era, but the hard work always didn't have a purpose. Okay, you're working hard, but what are you working towards? What is your vision here? What do you see? Yeah, I think a lot of times we couldn't see the vision. But with Tom Herman, everything you do has a purpose. There is an outcome with what you're doing, with this workout, with this competition, with whatever it is, that's leading to something bigger. And I think that's kind of what this offensive game plan is going to be. Yes, we're going to hammer the inside zone, and we're going to run it because the minute they adjust based on what we've seen on film, it's going to open up these two or three different things. Yeah. And I know that sounds simple, but Rod, you've been around this game long enough. I've observed it from afar. You'd be surprised at how often offensive coordinators outthink themselves in terms of doing stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I've said it all along, man. Football, and I heard this from a very good football mind that I trust. Football is a simple game made complicated by simple men. When you, at the end of the day, man, schemes and X's and O's, man, it's not that difficult. Yeah. It's really not. I think people make it more difficult. So, anyway, that's kind of my rambling and long answer to a question of what I liked about the offense and kind of where you can see this going.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting that the conversation, Matt bringing up the Major Applewhite, that the influences offensively. I mean, maybe, I don't know, I got to do research now and go back and kind of look at all the influences on Tom Herman, including the power spread element of Urban Meyer and, kind of what he's taken, because it seems, I do see that influence. I'm like, but where did he get the Brian Harsin influence? He gets it from Major Applewhite, who got it from Brian Harsin. Yeah, that's how it works.
And then they all have the roots in that Greg Davis. When you look at a guy like Applewhite and Herman coming up together, and
very
then
interesting.
You can pull the way we say always great minds are pulling the best bits of info and then using the ones that are going to be best utilized with your situation. And I mean, it's exactly how you saw what Braxton Miller was used up at Ohio State, or the way that Gerard Hurd may be being used. Like, you can always see that there's going to be different influences that come around, and Tom Herman seems like one that really is forming his own individual identity, but using a lot of different, concepts, which are very modern offense.
If you hear Tom Herman break down his offense at its simplest and say, describe your offense, what is it? He'll describe it as kind of that old school Greg Davis two-back offense, but with two major changes. You run it from the shotgun exclusively, and you have a dynamic quarterback run game to go with it.
A spread evolved version.
And I think when you look at Tom Herman, I mean, what he was doing, it's funny to kind of look at Tom Herman's trajectory as a coordinator to being a head coach and look at it alongside Greg Davis. And the reason why I say that is Tom Herman's first coordinator gig was at Texas State in 2005. What did Texas start doing in the few years before that? They were running zone read and running it better than anybody in the country. It was Greg Davis just kind of decided, look, okay, with Vince Young, the pro-style two-back offense is not going to work. We need to go to the shotgun and do this, and this, boom. Yeah. Off they went. Tom Herman was doing the same thing at Texas State with Barrick Neely, a guy who, doesn't need to be he's not a pro-style two-back guy. Let's put him in the shotgun. Let's do some of the same zone read stuff. Yeah. And boom, Texas State was an eyelash away of playing for a national championship at the 1AA level. He kind of evolved that offense, but I think the biggest evolution of Tom Herman as an offensive coordinator came when he worked with Urban Meyer, because he's got this old school two-back offense that he's evolved into something that fits kind of modern college football. And we know Urban with that power spread, they just kind of meshed it together. And you look at Urban Meyer's offense, what he values as an offensive coordinator, heavy use of the tight ends, motions, a lot of speed sweeps and stuff like that. Kind of that, he's not from the Boise tree, obviously, but it's some of the same stuff you saw with Brian Harsin, molds it with what Tom Herman's got, and boom, then you see the offense that we can say, a lot of that reminds me of kind of some stuff we saw with Harsin. Yeah. But it's a little bit different because Tom Herman is more aggressive, I think, as a play caller, and is willing to take more chances, and isn't afraid to run the same play, whether it's a counter or an inside zone or whatever. Run it out of multiple formations with multiple looks, but you're running the same play because, man, I really like that play, and this defense can't stop it. So why the hell would I run something different? Well, just keep hammering them.
He's a power guy because he's an O-line guy. I mean, that's where he started out as a coach. He was an O-line. He was actually working with the offensive line first. So he's a power guy. He appreciates the power running game. I think the element within his offense that is more him. I'm trying to see if I can tie it back to one of his stops along the way as a coach. I think that vertical passing game, a lot of it is him. I think he's just an aggressive offensive coordinator, and once he understands about pressuring defensive backs and understands that if you maintain that constant pressure by having the deep ball element we've talked about on this show, just the threat of the deep ball, then it just scares the hell out of the defense and the coordinators, and it makes them timid and it makes them play on their heels. And I think that's how he likes his defensive coordinator to be the same way. He wants his defensive coordinator to keep the offense on their heels. I think offensively he wants to be aggressive. There's nothing more aggressive in football than the deep ball. There's nothing more aggressive than throwing the ball deep.
You probably
20 yards or more through the air.
Two places where you really saw him do it. One was at Rice when he had Chase Clement and Jarrett Dillard, who set basically every passing record at Rice that could be set. Those two guys set it. Yeah. And then you go back and watch Ohio State, man. That's what they did. It's you hammer Zeke Elliott. Boom, Devin Smith's getting behind the defense for 6 points. That's go look Tom Herman's last couple of years at Ohio State. Go look at like Devin Smith's yards per catch.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
He'd have games where it'd be like 2
No, I agree. No, I understand. I'm saying I think that's him though. I think that's him. They didn't get that from Urban Meyer or get that from
his wrinkle.
That's him. That's what he wants. That's like, no, I'm power running game. Essentially, it ain't that different from what Baylor and Art Browse and what Sterling Gilbert did,
it's
right?
Like his
it's a power running game. I'm going to suck you into this power running game. So the two most aggressive things you can do is run it down somebody's throat and then throw it deep. That's what he's going to do. Yeah. He's going to run down your throat. I'm going to force you to defend this. As soon as you do, what you have to do to put 8 men in the box, the only way you can do it, unless you got freakish D tackles, which nobody has these days, or a freakish middle linebacker, which also nobody has these days. You got to compensate by bringing your safeties in the box. When you do that, I have the athletes, freakish athletes, which Texas has on the outside, to go deep over the top. You know what I mean? I think that my point is that is him. I don't think he got that from any other like offensive connection.
But that's
his personality.
That goes to what you talked again. You talk to guys that have been around Tom Herman, and they'll tell you his biggest asset as a coordinator, as a play caller, is the ability to recognize his personnel and adapt what he's doing to his personnel. I pulled up Ohio State's statistics from 2014, Tom Herman's last year there. Devin Smith averaged 28.2 yards a catch. Yeah. And it's not like he caught like 10 balls. That's 33 for 931, 28.2 per catch, 12 touchdowns.
Yeah, but where else do we see that? Baylor.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You see guys averaging 18, 19 yards a catch. Yeah, because it's power running game and deep
and they
ball
throw
over
for
the top.
300 because of the correlation strictly from one or the other, that then if you have the players that on the field can adapt to the situations and recognize pre-snap and understand what they're doing, it's just going to feed into yourself so much more. That's the last connection, is being the head of Herman, but at the head of the offense and having that connection between the quarterback. Yeah. So he doesn't miss when it is that one time you have the one-on-one down the field, you identify it and then execute it, because you can't afford to leave those out there. And then it's going to open up the run game across when you look at the way those two connect. It's very similar to other sports when you see outside-inside combinations. And Herman's the type of guy that when you talk about versatility, the last thing that we would want to go with is, if you're on the field, what can you do if the defense is countered and defensively has that? Well, if you have position versatility and your 5 guys now can combine to have, say, 20 different combinations, if 2 of them have multiple position ability, be able to move over and bump to the slot, or how we saw somebody motion into the backfield and become a running back, and you can then engineer that mismatch in addition to recognizing those things. It just allows for that ceiling of the offense to be there on every play. You have a chance for an explosive play.
Rod, you talk about Tom Herman's evolution. I'm just going back and pulling up some numbers. I'm going back and looking at his time at Rice in 2008 when Rice went 10-3, which Rice winning 10 games in a season was it's still really weird.
It's still a joke that Texas State almost played for a national championship, and that was with Hermans Offense.
Right. The 2 things that stick out to me the most, obviously you look at Chase Clement's numbers. Chase Clement threw the ball in 13 games, threw it 490 times, completed 66.5% of his passes, over 4,000 yards, 44 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. The 2 big threats, though, you talk about the vertical game. Jarrett Dillard averaged 15.1 yards a catch, 20 touchdowns, 87 balls.
I remember.
Jarrett Dillard was big time. But the other part of the Tom Herman offense, we talk about the tight end. You remember who Rice's leading receiver at tight end was that year?
Like Chase.
How about James Casey?
James Casey
had 111 catches for over 1,300 yards and 13 touchdowns.
Yeah, I remember that.
I think he set some almost national record for tight ends that year or something. It was something crazy.
Yeah, I mean, we're just kind of piecing it together as we go just to get an idea, and we saw a very vanilla version of that in the spring game, but that's what the Tom Herman offense is going to do. I think I think you want to see the play action pass, a power run game, all that stuff, but I think more than anything it's recognizing the personnel you have and adapting your style to the personnel and rolling with it from there.
Yeah, which he did. That's why you saw a lot of those wide receivers, in the backfield, in motion. The misdirection. He doesn't have the tight ends right now to do it, so he did it kind of with wide receivers and some other different. Didn't really have the running backs to do what he wants to do either. To see a lot of multiple backs in the backfield.
One scholarship back in the spring game. Yeah. Antonio Carter, that was it.
So like you said, very vanilla, extremely vanilla version of it. But I liked what I saw.
I want to talk about Shane Buechele, though, before we move on and start talking about other aspects of this offense. We'll talk about the offensive line. Obviously, we got to talk some defense. But I felt like the command of the offense Shane Buechele had, his overall feel, his presence on the field was better than I anticipated it to be. I honestly was thinking, at times he'll look a little lost. He'll look like he's not real sure what was going on. Rod, I didn't think that was the case at all with how he looked on Saturday.
No, I agree. I think he looked really comfortable. That's why I said at this point, I am very confident that he's going to end up being the starting quarterback week 1 because I saw so much distance. I don't know if it can be covered just in that short amount of time, considering what we know about that young man too, that he grinds just as much as Sam Ehlinger is a grinder. He's a grinder too. So I agree with you. I think his he looked accurate once again. Love the deep ball. The deep ball is beautiful. I mean, he's got one of the best deep balls in the country, no question about it. But considering it's a new offense, new system, he just looked comfortable.
Right.
It looked like it didn't look like he was. I looked at him in the pocket a few times, and I want to see if I would see him kind of make kind of second guess himself, if you will. He didn't do that. I mean, he looked like he was pretty decisive. He looked like, he was making those decisions pretty in routine. So I thought that, I thought that he looked great, and I thought he was a leader too out there. I mean, you could see that the leadership.
I don't know if you
aspect.
remember this throw, but I know people talk about the touchdowns to Colin Johnson. He had a couple on some corner routes to hit Reggie Hemphill on a corner route at one point. Which Reggie Hemphill maps was kind of one of the surprises of this spring game. It just shows you the depth at wide receiver this program has right now. But the best throw I thought he made was a little rollout pass. He sees pressure coming to him, sticks a foot in the ground, and fires a dart. Didn't look like his feet were really set, but just fired a dart to Lil Jordan Humphrey in a window that was not very big.
The one right over the middle, right?
Yeah, and I was
That's
like,
a Colt McCoy
that was one that, I don't want to say it, but man,
it was
it
one
really
what I
was
saw, 100%.
where I was just kind of like, wow.
One defender was underneath, one was over the top.
That's a big league throw.
Yeah, he had nowhere to go with it, honestly. But I saw that. I remember that throw. Yeah.
When you combine
that one.
like his mind, what he saw, the window, and then how quickly he had to do that, and then the composure he did it all with, that's the total package in one throw that you want to see.
People, look, man, you guys have heard me say this so much, and people are going to get tired of hearing me say it, but I'll say it again because it's worth repeating when you talk about Shane Buechele. People get so caught up on what he's not that they lose sight of what he is. And the two things he brings to the table that are elite tools, number one is accuracy, which leads into the other tool. And, Rod, you've been around quarterbacks who have done it, some guys who couldn't. I think you talked about Joey Harrington in the NFL being unable to do this, and there are two things that really tie into one: the ability to see it develop, the ability to anticipate and make the throw and know where you're going for the football, being decisive. That bleeds into accuracy. Man, if you can do those things as a quarterback, those things that kind of tie in together, I know that's more than two things, obviously, but, man, if you can read it, see it, know where you're going with it, anticipate, and then you've got the arm talent, the mechanics, the stroke to get it there, man, you're starting with a really good baseline skill set.
That's why it's tough to evaluate quarterbacks and develop quarterbacks. You mentioned like 18 different things.
I said two. Yeah,
but you're right. But that's how it is with quarterback, though.
It's simple.
It's not at all. It's not that simple at all. It's not that simplified. But it all happens within 4 seconds. He's got to figure all this out. All those different things have to come into play and be almost perfect for him, for the quarterback to be able to complete the pass and execute the play. And when it comes down to a guy like Shane Buechele, for all those reasons you just named, all those things you just named, he's really comfortable doing all those things. And the elite tools that I see, I think his deep ball is elite. That comes with his accuracy. He just has a way to put it right in that little soft spot.
Just a
where
touch,
the DB
something you're born
can't
with.
get it. Yeah, I don't know that. Yeah, I think you're born with that kind of stuff too. So his deep ball is elite. His accuracy is elite. And I think, when you start looking at his quick release, even that play we just talked about, the little Jordan Humphrey play, I mean, he gets it out quick. Like I think they say Tony Romo had a quick release. Like he has a really quick release. That comes from, I think, baseball.
I was about to say, that's exactly.
That's turning the play, whatever. I'm not going to
middle infield.
Yeah, but he has, those are kind of his three elite tools. And I always say, if you have a quarterback, your quarterback has to have like an X-Man ability, like something your quarterback does better than anybody else that sets them apart. His X-Man ability, I do believe, is his accuracy that makes his deep ball really good. And maybe and this is kind of what you were talking about, is two things that end up being 8 things. The accuracy makes his deep ball really good, but his quick release, I think, is part of his accuracy. You know what I mean? That's how he can throw a guy open. But when Tyrone Soup starts to throw a guy open, it's like... it's like Brock Osweiler trying to get a giraffe to get started. It's like
a pitcher in the windup.
But when he's trying to throw a guy open, it's like decision made. You know what I mean? Can you ever watch Tyrone Soups and you can kind of watch him think? You're like, I'm watching him think.
Yes.
I can see him think this play through. He is actually and it's like not in a good way, not in the Aaron Rodgers play. Like, oh, look at Aaron Rodgers. No, not that one way.
There were times
it's thinking way too slowly for that position.
Times in 2010 where you see Garrett Gilbert do the same thing.
You know what I mean?
To say Gilbert, you can see all 18 of those things calculating in his eyes in the pocket.
With Shane Buechele, man, that stuff happens in a split second, and then when he gets the ball out, decision made. And I think that's what I said. That one thing helps all things. But I'm like you. I try to describe 2 things, and I got into like 8 things.
To that point, the way you even correlated some of that quick release to his baseball skills, it's the exact difference between watching a pitcher in a windup and a catcher or a shortstop that is fielding and playing in the chaos, reacting and being able to be comfortable in that situation, because it isn't chaos to them. It's just chaos to us. And then you see something like a guy, like you were saying, Swoops, who's working to become a quarterback, was in the windup, focusing on all the things that he's been coached to do, not just out there reacting naturally. So those are the type of things that really, when you talk about those baselines that are all of the factors that are intangibles, there's a lot of the quarterback may have the most of those piled up, that the intangibles really overrule those tangibles whenever you have them. You can't explain them, but those are a lot of those things that lead to those it factors you talk about.
That's exactly it. Yes, it basically came down. I'm glad you described it better than any of us could. It's the it factor, and he's got that it factor. Sam Mellinger's got it too, but it's going to be hard for his to shine through he's playing with the lesser supporting cast, number one, and it's a new system for him, and he's also he went to prom last semester. I mean, he's a true freshman, for God's sakes, an early enrollee.
He would be going to prom.
Or he would be going to prom. Yeah, I'm tripping. Yeah, he should be going to prom, for God's sakes.
I'll say this about Shane Buechele before we move on and talk about something else. And I thought this was the most important takeaway, other than some of the things I saw on defense. This was the most important positive takeaway from the spring game. It's been a long time since Texas has had a spring game. I mean, you don't need all your fingers on one hand to count the number of times this has happened in the post-Colt McCoy era, where the perceived number 1 quarterback played and looked like the number 1 quarterback in the spring game.
It hasn't happened since, I think, David Ash. Maybe David Ash did. No, because him and Case, I think, they battled it like 2000, was it 12 or 13 or one of those, you know what I mean? Like, I think both of them had a decent game. Both of those guys had a decent game. It was like, well, we didn't learn anything from there.
And then
we
last
are we
year,
are.
you sort of assumed Buechele would be really good at it, but it wasn't like
he wasn't the starter.
He was tripping in high school.
Yeah, and then Charlie Strong kept lying to us and lying. Well, I don't know. Charlie Strong lied to himself in 2015 when Gerard Hurd had a better spring game, and we all were like, okay, well, obviously just go with Gerard Hurd going against Notre Dame. Just go with the new one, and we'll let the chips fall where they may. And he lied to himself and said Tyrone Swoops was better, and ended up Tyrone Swoops was not better, and he admitted that. I want to say after the Cal game where Gerard Hurd sets the record,
where he broke VY's
Charlie Strong
total yardage.
Up there laughing. It's like, you know what? I probably should have went with Gerard Hurd initially. We're like, yo, you think you should have did that? You think, Charlie? You think? And then so we didn't know then, and then you're right. So it's been. Man, we might have to go back into 2000. The Garrett Gilbert, I have to go back to that. Like,
no, man, because 2011, I don't remember him having a good spring game. Not at the top of my head.
So 2010,
maybe 10 with Gilbert. I don't remember.
Maybe 10 with Gilbert. It's the last time you got to go back.
With Colt.
Yeah,
like I said, you don't.
Good point.
Regardless of who you want to put in there, you don't need all your fingers on one hand.
This is the first time this is how you know we're not in quarterback hell anymore. Though. Right. That was quarterback hell. When you don't know who the hell the starting quarterback is in college, coming out of spring and even coming out. Hell, we didn't know coming out of two-a-days and coming into the season for 2 seasons, 2 out of the last 3 seasons.
Don't remind me.
Yeah, so that's quarterback hell. We are no longer in quarterback hell. Now we are firmly in. We're not in quarterback heaven yet, but we're close. Yeah, quarterback year 4 year. We're there because Shane Buechele's he's legit.
Texas earning its way there as a program.
It's a quarterback competition and no longer a battle of attrition. Right. It is truly that.
I want to throw this in there about Sam Ehlinger before we move on and get off of quarterbacks. We talk about the rate of development. That was the term we used a lot last year to talk about Shane Buechele. That it makes sense. It's only going to be a matter of time before he passes Tyrone Swoops. I think people kind of maybe underestimated that Shane Buechele still has a lot of developing to do because conventional wisdom tells you Sam Ehlinger is going to be a lot better that first practice in August than he was even on Saturday. He's going to be a lot better. But so is Shane Buechele. And like you said, Rod, the gap between the two I think is so significant right now, at least it appears to be, that it's really hard to see Ehlinger passing him. Look, if Sam does, then this program is going to be in a really good spot.
You talking about we're gonna exactly.
Finally,
you're gonna have 2. Basically, you would take then. That's the case. If Sam Ehlinger is able to take the starting quarterback spot from Shane Buechele just in training camp in the offseason, then Texas would have 2 of the top 5 quarterbacks in the Big 12 on the same roster.
Ooh,
yeah.
Right? Think about it, because Shane Buechele is already top top 4, top 3 or 4
All
right
we
now.
want to go down. We just want to go down the list.
So
and do this.
if he's top 3 or 4 right now, and then Sam Mellinger surpasses him, and that's Tom Herman. Tom Herman's, I think we can all agree, he's a pretty harsh critic. Like Sam, he you know what I mean, if anybody is going to fight against that a little bit and fight against, I don't know, being misled, it would be Tom Herman in his first season. So I would say that would be the case. And that hadn't happened since when? When was the last time that was the case? Applewhite Sims.
Okay, so
last time that was the case, when Texas had like 2 of the top 5 quarterbacks in the conference.
Let's just go around the Big 12 and just look at the other quarterbacks. So Baylor, you've got Anu Solomon, the transfer from Arizona, and Zach Smith.
Anu Solomon, he was a good athlete, but he's
I'll
Gerard Hurd.
I'll take Shane Buechele. So basically, we're asking right now, will we take Shane Buechele over those guys? Because then Sam Ehlinger is going to leapfrog him.
Right.
In this thought experiment. Yes. Yeah, in this thought experiment. Okay.
Iowa State, you got Jacob
Buechele.
Park, and I don't remember who else is there.
Give me, Buechele, baby.
Even though they did beat Texas last year, the Kansas quarterbacks.
I'll take Buechele. But I like Kansas football is doing. Just put out there for the record.
Jesse Ertz at K-State.
You know, he's got some moxie. I mean, but I would take Shane Buechele. I'm a Shane Buechele guy. I'll take Shane Buechele.
He only works at Kansas State.
Ertz is a really good fit for what Bill Snyder wants to do.
He can't really throw like he's
Those
just
are
a
outliers.
good.
He's Colin Klein. Like I don't know what's going on.
Colin Klein light. He's Colin Klein light.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay, Baker Mayfield.
Baker's better.
Mason Rudolph at Oklahoma State.
Mason's better. Oklahoma quarterbacks.
The TCU quarterbacks, you've got Kenny Hill and Sean Robinson, the true freshman, who TCU people are saying.
I've heard he's a beast.
Some people are saying that Sean Robinson had a better spring than Kenny Hill.
I could believe that.
I could see that.
Which could be really good.
I could believe that.
Or it could be not so good.
It could be just like Texas was for 5 years.
Yeah.
Well, we know what Kenny Hill is because he's only on Kenny Trail. We know what Kenny Hill is.
Yeah.
So I would say, that Sean Robinson could win that position, but that would be really great for them to have a veteran backup like that behind a young quarterback. You're going to give those reins to. But I'll take Buechele right now.
I guess Texas Tech's going to roll with Nick Shimonek at quarterback.
Any quarterback Tech puts out
like
there,
Buechele.
or that Cliff Kingsbury puts out there, is going to be, stat-wise, is going to fill up the stat sheet. Listen, I'll say this. Cliff Kingsbury knows how to pick damn quarterbacks. Say what you want about him. He neglects defense. He's not a great head coach, but he knows how to pick quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield, Davis Webb, Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
The list goes on and on. The guy knows what he's doing when it comes to I think he was the first coach to actually offer head coach to offer Shane Buechele, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, that guy knows what he's talking about when it comes to quarterbacks. But I'll take
back to
Buechele
Jimmy.
right now over Shimonek.
And then Will Greer at West Virginia. The Florida
Yeah, I mean,
transfer.
you got the Oklahoma guys and then Buechele.
That's what I'm saying.
And he's right there. Who knows? He could be as good as a guy like Rudolph next year, so we'll see.
I think it's Rudolph and Mayfield, and then I think
Yep.
I'll put Buechele, Greer, and Jesse Ertz kind of in the same conversation.
Exactly. So if you guys say I'm
So that's a good
overtaking
case.
him, man, that then Texas would have 2 out of the top 5.
So
yeah,
you're
that's
looking-
the best case scenario in context to the conference since like Colt McCoy, where you say Texas has one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the conference. You haven't been able to say that.
Best
in a
case
decade.
scenario, he's the number 3 quarterback in the league. Worst case is he's number 5.
Yeah, worst case
the way
he's number
things stand
5.
right now. And then in this hypothetical scenario, you're assuming Sam Ehlinger wins the job and is better than Shane Buechele. Then yeah, man, you're going to be in a really good spot.
That's Sims Applewhite stuff. That's when you got I'm ready to deal with the problem of who or which one of these great quarterbacks should play. All right, I'll figure it out.
That's when you get those first world problems.
Yeah,
Texas football
that
problems
is a
right
first
there.
world problem. Yeah, we had third world problems.
So let's talk about the rest of this offense real quick, guys, and wrap up that side of the ball. We don't need to spend too much time on tight end because one of the most telling comments Tom Herman had after the spring game was, and he said he's told Garrett Gray this, so he didn't feel bad telling the media this, Texas can't go win the Big 12 right now with Garrett Gray being what he is right now at tight end as their number 1 option at tight end.
Tom Herman said that?
Yeah.
That's funny.
And it's reality, man. I mean, you look, Garrett Gray's a guy that hasn't played a lot, and you saw even in the spring game there were times where it was kind of moving a little too fast for him. He had that one ball where Buechele, Adam Barnold, Adam Sandler skid turn, tried to button hook him, tried to throw him that button hook, and you saw Gray's not even turn around when the ball's getting there, and then he turns around, it's right on his chest, and he kind of just awkwardly juggled it, and it just
looking unathletic out there.
It just didn't look right. So this tight end position.
Oh, and Reese Latau's
Reese Lato sounding kind of.
I want to say his date was pushed back though. His court date
was pushed back, but if you read some of what Brian Davis is reporting in the Austin American Statesman, BD's been up there in Tulsa, the Jinx area.
Oh, really?
Covering the trial.
Unfortunately,
yeah. Doesn't sound promising.
Well, he was selling drugs near a school. What do you?
But the hope was if they could get it pled down to a misdemeanor, then he could have a fighting chance of. But
when you're dealing with those type of drugs,
It's
controlled
tough,
substances are different. When you're
I
around
figured
schools.
that. Yeah, I was gonna say it's near a school. Anything near
Well,
school.
it was
if
at
it wasn't
school.
near a school, I think he'd have been fine. The near school thing, it adds.
Or
adds
if it
to
was
the
just like, say,
criminal-
weed at a school, I think he might be fine.
Yeah.
But when you add that
Yeah.
it's something on the
It's gonna be
next
tough.
level, then you're in trouble.
It's gonna be tough.
I think
Especially with the quantity.
the concerning
Yeah.
things about the tight end position. Number one is
The
Andrew.
curse? The
Is
curse?
Andrew? Well, we could have a whole
No, I
podcast
know,
on
I'm
that.
joking.
So
Yeah, it is curse. We just talked about it recently.
right, and then we go back, start Jermichael Finley, and then Zach Pianalto.
Yeah,
and we're
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about all kinds of names.
Yes,
So fast.
true.
DJ Graham,
Blaine
Blaine
Irby.
Irby. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trey Graham had a career-ending knee injury. So yeah, we're just not
Boskeezy.
gonna-
Boskeezy
yeah.
overcame the curse, though.
Yes, he did.
He beat the curse.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
So when you look at the tight end position, a couple things stick out. One, is Andrew Beck's foot problem going to be something that lingers? Because it concerns me, man. Anytime you're talking about a broken foot that gets rebroken
Yeah.
and then flares up shortly thereafter he returns, that just doesn't – I get – and it's not anything that's wrong with Andrew Beck. It's just,
No.
Rod, you've been around this game long enough that
That's
you see –
what it is, man.
when a guy starts having recurring foot problems, it's never a good sign.
Especially a big man. I mean, a bigger. Say
Beck's
bigger.
250-ish, so yeah. I mean,
yeah,
it's,
you're a bigger person with foot problems.
I should know. I got that plantar fasciitis thing in my left
Ooh,
foot.
that's a bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an age thing. My girlfriend, I think, has an issue with that now.
Yeah.
Very strange.
Mine flawed up back, I'd say, like 5 years ago when I started
Man.
running in the middle of the foot, but it went away. But, yeah, no, when you get those things, I mean, it's just straight up. It's like you're in Indiana Jones and they're the voodoo doll and they're just stabbing you up your foot.
I remember when Eli Manning had that. I thought, what a wimp. He got a little foot cramp, and I'm like, man, that ain't a foot cramp. That's
Man, that's
some
serious.
rough
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh, yeah, fascia can hurt you, or the turf toe killed Dion's career.
Turf toes
Ended
are
Jack
juicy.
Lambert's career. If he can end Jack Lambert's career, it ain't nothing.
You're a
to mess
bad
with.
mofo. Yeah.
Don't think when I got turf toe in high school, I didn't throw out the Jack Lambert thing. Oh, you got turf toe. Hey, this ended Jack Lambert's career. This is serious.
This is serious.
Business right here.
It's a toe.
It's
a big toe.
So is Beck's foot problem going to be something that's recurring?
No, you have to assume it is. If you're as a Tom Herman, you have to assume the worst at that with the tight end position.
Okay.
And prepare for it.
Okay, prepare for the worst.
Yeah.
The fact that Peyton O'Quinn, your scholarship tight end, your only other scholarship tight end other than Garrett Gray, was working behind a walk-on as the number 3 tight end.
Yeah.
It's just not looking like a scheme fit for Peyton O'Quinn. He was just recruited for a different offense.
Yep.
If Texas was still running the variant shoot, man, he would be perfect
He'd be
for what
great for
Texas
it.
wanted to do. What are you going to get from Kendall Moore, the Syracuse transfer, who is coming from an offense where he wasn't asked to do much? He was in a variant shoot at Syracuse. Steno Babers runs that same offense. And I'm just kind of looking at his numbers. I'm trying to look at the story I did on him.
Maybe he
when
was
announced his
underutilized.
transfer.
Could be maybe an underutilized there. Never know.
Yeah, just not a fit.
Yeah, I
leading to
mean,
transfer.
Put it like this, I trust that Tom Herman, if he just gets competent bodies at tight end, that he'll be able to do more with less.
Make it sufficient.
Yes, given his and with the tools he has at running back and wide receiver, he'll be able to makeshift it and put it all together just with bodies. What he would ideally like from his tight ends is the 5 tool that we talk about. A guy that can stretch the field, a guy that I can split out, a guy that can play that flex tight end for you, a guy that can be the H-back, a guy that can put his hand in the dirt and drive. That's ideally, you talked about the influence that 2005 Texas team had on him. Those tight ends.
The 04 when they
The
really when they
04,
started running
05
zone
tight
read, yeah.
ends, hell, man. Yeah, exactly, with Boskis and
David
David Thomas. That's what he would ideally like. It's right now that's not an option.
Not an option at all. And keep in mind that 2005 Texas team, even though you didn't have, I mean, you lost Boskis.
You lost
from
Boskis.
the year before, but you had a guy who was an NFL fullback in Ahmad Hall on that team too.
Very true. Forget about that.
You had a guy, Neil Tweedy, who Neil Tweedy was what he
Good
was.
point.
He was that blocking tight end, that goal line tight end. So
Good point.
You had some different pieces you could work around.
Yeah.
And then, hey, look, anytime you've got 10 back there taking the snaps, you should be able to figure out how to
I
make
can
it
play tight end.
Hey, Rod, you played nickelback taking on the Nebraska fullbacks.
I did.
Back in the day.
Yeah, I remember
Once
those
upon a
days.
time.
Man.
Had them
Bull
mindset.
Reese making you feather that option, man.
Maybe I did get a concussion that game. If there was any game that I might have had a concussion and didn't know about it, because I was never diagnosed with a concussion, it would have been that game. Then I
Right.
just got up and kept rolling.
Rod,
Everybody, draw.
and I know
That's a
I'm
guy
wanting
that
to talk
was
about
wrong.
how people
Dominic
look, man, but
Grayel.
your freshman year, man, those those oversized Reebok jerseys did not do you any favors, man.
Oh man, I look like I just don't look like I have any definition. I look,
Nah,
I look bad.
You
I look
actually look like the video game depiction of you.
I was just gonna say I look like those old video games. It looks terrible.
The Nike
those
stuff
look
was
so
very
cool at
much
the
more
time,
form
too.
fitting.
Yeah, now those guys are yeah. But in 2002, I look more like a modern football player and like a more fashionable football player. But now the guys look really cool. Like now they look like you go like the DBs now, like the Sean Elliott and those guys. They look cool. Like
And
they
y'all
look cool
look so sleek compared to the blocky Brian Jones era, where they just look
man.
like the neck rolls and like I mean everybody
it was
was
terrible.
250 to 300. Yeah.
Yeah, those are ugly.
Looking at Kendall Moore's numbers, I finally found them because I'm actually having reading comprehension issues today.
That happens.
4 seasons at Syracuse, played in 37 games. He was hurt for the 2015 season, so he did not play at all. I believe that was 14. I don't remember. But anyway, 37 games, 15 receptions, 150 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Oh, yeah.
Former high school offensive tackle. So, look, it's not like you're going to expect Kendall Moore to come in here and be Boskay for David Thomas or Jermichael Finley.
How quickly will Cade Brewer play?
How quickly can he get here?
What you just
Seriously.
explained from Kendall Moore,
But
though,
you got to
it
put
sounds
some
like-
weight on him really quickly. I mean, I think he's a little. I mean, obviously you got to put some muscle mass on him because coming from high school. But I mean, he's got all the tools to be the. He literally is just missing mass, in my opinion, so that he can actually be a legitimate blocker at the college
The one
level.
thing I liked about him, the 2 times I saw Lake
I
Travis play,
love everything
one was
about
in the
him.
semifinals against Atascocita, the other was in the state championship game against the Woodlands. He's a willing blocker.
Yeah.
Like, he's not shy about contact and doesn't look awkward trying to play with his hand in the dirt. Like, okay, he can fire off and hit somebody and knows what to do with his hands and can run his feet on contact. Like, there's something there that you can work with for sure.
I agree.
Yeah.
No question.
So, but yeah, Cade Brewer, especially regardless of what happens with Reese Lato, Cade Brewer is going to be a candidate to play the minute he gets.
They have to.
Even
choice.
before the Lato thing happened, I mean, they sold him in recruiting. Like, look, we need tight ends to come in and play now.
Right now. Eat cheeseburger, son.
That's
Eat
why they
cheeseburgers.
offered like 9 tight ends when they first got here.
They did. They offered a ton
Between
of them.
JUCO guys and high school guys, they offered like, I don't remember if it was 9, but it was a lot of tight ends.
No, it was
they
a lot of tight
offered.
ends. I remember. I think it was at least 7. It was a bunch of them.
It was a lot.
early on. Yeah.
So Cade Brewer's going to play, but tight end's a big concern. The other concern I have offensively is I'm not concerned about the running back position because, look, I think whenever you get to fall camp, some of these guys are going to be healthy. The challenge, especially for Chris Warren and Kirk Johnson, is going forward, their best ability needs to be their availability. More so Kirk Johnson than Chris Warren, because at least Chris Warren, we have a sample of what he can do.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really know anything about Kirk Johnson.
No, we don't.
At this point.
Yeah. Toneel Carter could easily end up taking that.
I mean,
that spot.
I could tell you Kirk Johnson's a pretty good special teams player because we've seen him do that.
Yeah.
We really haven't seen him contribute at running back except for a handful of plays his true freshman year.
I agree.
So,
and you would like a change of pace. He seems like he would be a perfect kind of change of pace from the Kyle Porter or the Chris Warren, who are more downhill guys. But Toneel Carter can be that change of pace guy.
Yeah, I think if Texas would have been playing OU on Saturday, Kyle Porter would have been on the field.
I agree. No, from what I heard, basically since he just carried so much of the load in spring practice because there were no other running backs available then, they basically got the spring game off, essentially.
Won't you sit this one out, son?
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, we know what you can do. Yeah, we've seen so many reps that you were good.
So I'm not worried really. And then you throw in Daniel Young. If you've got 6 scholarship running backs and you don't have enough of them healthy to field a 2 deep, then something just went horribly wrong, and so that's something that was out of your control.
Yeah.
So I'm not too worried about the running back position.
Yeah.
I am worried about the offensive line from this standpoint. I think they've got 3 guys, 4 when Zach Shackelford comes back, that are ready-made guys that you can say, that guy's a starting caliber player. Connor Williams, Patrick Vahe, Jake McMillan, Zach Shackelford. The thing that concerns me is the right side of that offensive line, because it seemed like whenever the defense was making plays on Saturday against the number 1 offense, it was over the right side of the offensive line. And that was Tristan Nicholson and Elijah Rodriguez. Okay. I think the guard problem probably gets solved when Shackelford comes back, McMillan slides back over to right guard. I think that solves your problem. The interesting position here is right tackle, because I say that about McMillan, but let me just throw this scenario out there. There's a couple things I can see happening. One is Tristan Nicholson gets pushed and steps up and is serviceable enough that you can work around whatever deficiencies he may or may not have, and he could be your starting right tackle. Well, actually, there's 3 scenarios. 2 is Brandon Hodges comes back from his academic troubles and takes over that starting right tackle spot, which he started 9 games there last year. 3, Denzel Okafor's better than both of those guys. Emerges there by the time you get to September 2nd, if not a couple weeks into the season. And Denzel Okafor starts the majority of the games at right tackle in 2017, and boom, you're off and running going to 2018.
That would be nice.
The next scenario is none of those guys are options, which is a pretty big issue if it were to happen. You keep McMillan at center. You move Zach Shackelford to right tackle just to get your 5 best, and hope that Patrick Hudson is good enough to be a starting caliber player.
Man, yeah. Obviously, I think you went in the order of what would be ideal. Yeah.
To worst.
Yeah, you definitely went from best to worst. That could be disastrous, actually, for Texas. Considering, if you just look at, game plan to try to stop Texas, or if one of the sides of the offensive line is just that inadequate, that could be an issue. I think because there is a possibility, you do have the likelihood of Brandon Hodges coming back. Well, isn't he just out for the spring because of academic issues?
Yeah.
He'll be back, assuming everything goes as planned. He'll be back for training
He'll
camp.
have enough to get there.
Yeah, so I think ideally with him and developing guys like Denzel Okafor, I think you should be okay. I really do. Hopefully you don't get to the worst case scenario which you brought up, which is a possibility. But I guess you shouldn't hope for the best if you're
the offensive line's got depth. It does not have talented depth right now. Game ready depth.
They do have. It's weird. The offensive line is very strange because they have the most talent they've had on the offensive line,
right.
Talent, NFL caliber talent, just they've had since 2008.
Which is good.
But
they still have to tie it together.
Yeah, and they have a lot of center position. You're solid in a lot of areas, but I guess where you do have your deficiencies within your offensive line, they are extremely deficient.
And that's where the
you drop
worry
off a cliff from the left side.
Because they're a unit, and if there's one flaw, it doesn't matter if the other 4 are above average and can individually do it right. If one is going to compromise the entire line, it doesn't matter where they're getting through or how or what's going wrong. You have to have that unit being able to work together. So when you look at it that way, it does make it worrisome, but it also means that if you can find that one gap to plug, then you'll be good.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go over and talk about defense as we wave goodbye to our Facebook Live audience. We're going to shut down the Facebook Live, so
Godspeed.
Facebook Live, hope you guys enjoyed it. We will do it again most likely next week. Thanks to Travis, the best videographer in the podcast game. Let's talk about this Texas defense. And Rod, it was a pretty vanilla game plan, but some of the stuff I saw Todd Orlando do with the movement, some of the stunts up front, the way you're bringing guys off the edge, I'm really excited about what this defense can do in 2017.
That front 7 is going to be special. They got potential to be special. Malcolm Roach, just the D line and the linebackers.
Can I just stop you for a second?
Go ahead.
That group did what they were supposed to do in terms of dominate that number 2 offensive line. We know it's a weakness we talked about, so go out and dominate them. Don't do what happened last year where Shane Buechele and that number 2 offense shredded that number 1 defense. No, go out, establish yourselves, dominate the game, take it over. Boom, that was done.
They mashed them. But I think that because of Poona Ford and Malcolm Roach and Chris Nelson, you might have one of the better D lines you've had in a while with that 3-4 scheme. And the linebackers are just so deep behind wide receiver. It's the deepest position on the Texas roster. I mean, you think about it. I mean, they got guys that were starting 2 years ago, like Edwin Freeman, that may not see the field. You know what I mean? It's just that's how deep they are right now. And moving Breckenhager inside a linebacker makes them even more deep. By the way, is it an injury? Or is it just is something going on with Breckenhager? I'm hearing injury.
He's got an injury, but I'm telling you, man.
Or something happening here.
Anthony Wheeler was taking snaps away from him before the injury, and Todd Orlando.
No, I've heard that.
And Todd Orlando even said after the spring game, he said, "Yeah, Wheeler's the more consistent player right now. They're getting more out of Wheeler right now."
So you might have to find a spot to move Hager to if that's the case. That's only another luxury.
You could, that's another luxury. That's how deep they are.
He's playing better than
that the guy that led the team in sacks and tackles for loss last year.
He's out of nowhere.
Yeah, he's going to end up playing. I don't know where they're going to put him now. He doesn't fit a defensive line spot here. He
doesn't really fit that hybrid position.
He doesn't fit outside linebacker either.
Just man, Look,
I guess you can still leave him inside. My point is,
Yeah.
I mean, he just will be behind,
And you'll never
he'll
have
be behind
a weak
Wheeler.
spot. Whenever
You know?
he's off the field, you won't have a weak spot
But,
either way.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's how special it is. That's how special this linebacking core can be. I mean, Malik Jefferson's on the front line, and now Anthony Wheeler. You haven't talked about Gary Johnson coming in, and other inside linebacker prospect to play middle linebacker. Man, that group. We're not talking about Jeffrey McCulloch or Nashawn Hughes. Dude, they are deep.
But
at
you mentioned Hager and having to find a
I
spot
love
for
it,
him.
man.
Here's how you fix that. If somebody gets injured, Todd Orlando, the way he does it, I think I've broken this down, but he broke it down again after the spring game, especially those guys inside. If you're inside backers, so the weak side is the rover and the middle linebacker, which is the Mac, he cross-trains guys at both those positions. So let's say Malik Jefferson goes down, right? Something happened.
Yeah.
Knock on wood. Something happens to Malik Jefferson.
Yeah.
The backup, the number 2 rover, isn't necessarily the guy that's going to go in the game. If Hager's a starting Mac, it might be Wheeler, who's the next best guy to come in. It might be Gary Johnson. So if you've got 2, 3, 4 guys on that inside that you trust, at some point all 4 of those guys are going to play anyway. I think it's just the bigger the conundrum is a guy like Edwin Freeman. It just might be unfortunate. The guy that was probably your most consistent linebacker last year is having a hard time finding his role
in his system. Yeah.
Let me get your take on this though, Rob. Malik Jefferson had a quiet spring.
Yeah.
Didn't hear a lot about Malik this spring. Didn't really make a ton of plays in the spring game.
No, he did not.
Should that concern Texas fans?
I wouldn't be concerned because, I mean, I think there are other guys that I am expecting a lot from in that front seven. Malcolm Roach, number 1 of them, coming up this season. I think, and I think we just talked about how deep the linebackers are. I think he'll end up, making a lot of plays, especially in this defense. I think Todd Orlando has plans to use him. You talk about all the multiple ways they blitz, all the different stunts and stuff. I think they have a ton of different ways they're going to use him and his speed blitzing. I really do think there's no way this group, this coaching staff, is going to waste Malik Jefferson's talent. I just don't see it happening. I think that's the big. He kind of fits that. Is he playing the wheel?
Yeah.
He kind of fits that because at least he can work in space, and essentially he'll be playing inside linebacker to a certain degree anyway when they go to nickel. And I think him blitzing inside and blitzing, around the edge from that position, he can play more in space. Won't have to take on as many blocks as he was as a middle linebacker. I think Malik Jefferson's going to have a good year. I don't know why he has had a quiet spring. That's a good question. Coming off last year, you'd think he'd be wreaking havoc, but I think the coaching staff are going to maximize his talent. He's got too much of it. Too much of it.
Yeah, and the ability to make a play in space in this conference where you're more and more being put in one-on-one situations in space to make a play that even if, say, he isn't flashing all over the field in a playmaking situation in those one-on-ones, he's the type of guy that you really need to have on the field if you have that athleticism, length, speed, all of that. Hopefully it works within the defense. And the way Jeff was talking a bit earlier about a guy like, say, Wheeler or a guy like you have in the linebacker situation where you have to have a guy not necessarily just moving over and plugging the spot, and instead it's about the whole integrity of the defense staying together. And it reminded me of the way that you see in like basketball these days. A perfect example we'll be looking at tonight with Kevin Durant being out. A lot of people for years would have been like, okay, well, that means Andre Iguodala, the best player, just needs to go up there and be a starter. And a lot more you have seen ideology shift over that, no, we don't want to compromise our entire team and the ability for each unit to play well together. Instead, let's go and just shift to our strengths within that unit. Maybe let Matt Barnes start, and now we're going to have it being focused around a Curry, Clay, Draymond, and that's the same type of idea that you would hear, that if you do have a void, instead of moving a guy into that hole that may take away from both units because the chemistry may not be there, find the one that makes the whole work better. And when I heard you explain that, it really seemed like something that you've seen in more and more in this generation of coaches, where you had seen for 20 years, it was more of a just plug in the next guy and let him play and don't worry about all those other factors, the intangibles that you talk about.
So on this defense, Rod, when you look at this defensive front, we'll go to the secondary to kind of finish it off. I liked what I saw from those starting three with Roach, Poona Ford, and Chris Nelson when Chris Nelson was in there. I thought Jordan Elliott flashed the way ideally you kind of hoped he would flash.
Yeah.
considering the talent level he's got. Just a tremendously talented kid. I mean, if somebody from this defensive group is going to be in this staff's Ed Oliver, it's going to be Jordan Elliott, just based on his talent level. And I think he's got a high draft pick type ceiling. Ideally, you would like to say, can you get a true two deep at defensive line? I don't think they're quite there yet. I think Charles Omenihu, who's there. I think Elliott's on his way to being there. So then if you could say, take one of DeAndre Christmas or Gerald Wilbon or Chris Nelson or Marcel Southall, if and when he comes back from his academic issues, I think your potential to be all right in terms of talented depth in defensive line is there.
Yeah.
I think depth-wise at linebacker, I think you're good. The interesting position I want to ask you about was that B-backer position, because Nashawn Hughes made a couple plays here and there in the spring game, but I think the consensus from the fan response, at least at the flagship message board of horns247.com, my takeaways, Bobby Burton's takeaways, it feels like it's only a matter of time before Jeffrey McCulloch wins that job.
It's just more athletic, more explosive in that position. Yeah, I think that's what people are looking at. I think it's more because Nashawn Hughes has been fending him off pretty well. I think people anticipated that McCulloch would overtake him in the spring. That has not happened. And everybody, all the coaches everybody who comes in here as a coaching staff, we've had different ones in the last few years, they love Nashawn Hughes. Like, everybody's a big fan of Nashawn Hughes and his natural talent. So it'll be interesting to see. I think that the culture of the Big 12, it may lend itself to fit Jeffrey McCulloch's skill set a little bit more. But we don't know if he's going to be put in that situation unless Nashawn Hughes is exposed, I think. And that's if he's a starter. At this point, we still have training camp to go as well. But either way, these are good problems to have. Right. Talking about at the linebacker position. These are good discussions to have. Who's more of a natural fit for that B-backer? I got to see more of that Todd Orlando defense. It's an aggressive defense built on speed. I know he prefers. I don't know that. I've seen his defense. They have a tendency to favor linebackers who are undersized but fast. And that fits more McCulloch. Nashawn Hughes is longer, and that's a guy who potentially he could put his hand in there and play DN for you. He's just a long. I don't know if he's as fast and as explosive as a guy like Jeffrey McCulloch, and I think that skill set may be favored in Todd Orlando's defense, especially with the B-backer.
And that's a really good point bringing up right there. Just looking at what may be a baseline that'll indicate future players for Texas, something that where you see the de facto speed. De facto speed. Okay, de facto speed.
Yeah.
It's in the Big 12
Charlie
conference.
like length.
Yeah, and that just shows where fits, ideologies, things along those lines. It's almost like your football religion, like what you believe in, your belief system, and then you're going to form your entire team and future concepts around that. So even though the guy may be able to be more physical or have these abilities, like you said, the ranginess and size, but if it isn't really going to be working towards what their goal is, and it looks like speed, getting to the ball will be the biggest one, it doesn't matter. Because then if you have the effort and everything that we talk about, the party of the ball mentality, even if the first guy doesn't get him down, you're going to be able to get them there. So we'll see if that's what he actually recruits, traits along those lines too.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. We'll see. That's a good question, because I remember when we started recognizing those trends in Charlie Strong's recruiting, and he definitely liked long defenders. He liked length.
Those are the things they aren't going to tell you at the news conference necessarily, but you can pull from them when you start to see that. Like how you said at the beginning, it indicated the tight end to you whenever you see all these offers to tight ends or the focus on special teams and things along those lines.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So let's go to the secondary, Rod. I want to just let you. We've got about 15 or so minutes left in the show. I just kind of want to let you riff on the defensive backs and the secondary and what you saw from that group.
I will say they did get tested a lot. Well, at least the first team secondary. I didn't think they got tested a ton.
Chris Boyd did a little bit.
Chris Boyd got tested a little bit. That was just a great catch though by little Jordan Humphrey.
Yeah,
that was just amazing. I will say that he is confirming, at least in the spring game, he did confirm that that he flashes like that in spring practice. I've been hearing that he flashes like that, just like something freakish, and that catch was crazy. But anyway, the defensive backs, didn't get tested a lot. I do like the new safeties they're just more athletic. Brandon Jones and Deshaun Elliott, like those guys playing safety. I like the core of that first team secondary with PJ Locke at the nickel and Deshaun Elliott and Brandon Jones playing the safety. I think Brandon Jones is playing the boundary safety, or Deshaun Elliott. I'm not sure which one's playing the field. Is Deshaun Elliott playing the field, or is it Brandon Jones playing the field? But
it seemed more like. It seemed more like
I know they cross-trained him because that's Orlando's thing. He cross-trains them at both.
It seemed more like they spent time playing both.
Yeah, that's why I thought I saw
one was
him
the
switch
high
up.
safety, one was down in the box.
And so I think the secondary is going to be good, but they're still not there from what I saw. I mean, that's Chris Boyd is still in a position where, and sometimes he's out of position. I should say, where I said he's in a position to get beat, but that means he's out of position a lot of the times. And I haven't went back and broke down the spring game to find out if it's his eyes or if it's his feet or if they were even in man coverage or zone. But he's got. I want to recognize the true cover man among the cornerbacks. And I don't think we've really recognized a true cover man among this group in 2 years or so. I mean, it's been a while since Quandre left. They haven't had really kind of a true cover man. Carrington Bynum they used to put on guys, and I think his sophomore and junior year, he was one of those guys.
That Blackman year.
Yeah, that can kind of blanket a guy. I don't know if you can shut down guys these days, but blanket a receiver and you can trust them. And we thought that Devontae Davis and Houghton Hill would be those guys naturally. They kind of fit that frame. That has not been the case. Chris Boyd, I've been told, is the guy with the skill set to be a blanket corner, but I see him get beat, over the top, and I see him out of position sometimes. So I do wonder if they do even have that guy, or if they will have to compensate for not having a true blanket guy, and they won't be able to play as much man-to-man, making them play more zone, leaving them a little bit more vulnerable. You know what I mean? Like, that determines what you can do. If you don't have the guys, the horses that can just line up and play man-to-man, then you got to play more zone. It's just that simple. You know what I mean? Especially in the Big 12. PJ Locke is just great. I mean, like I said, he's fantastic. I like the safeties. I'm worried about the corners, to put it mildly. You know what I mean? I'm worried about the corners. I really am. I was worried about him last year. I'm worried about him again this year.
And I'll be intrigued to hear you dissect what exactly the root of because some of those, if you dissect one and it's a communication issue, it's a big deal. But if it's still like just fundamental, like footwork, whenever it's this many years in, that's something that could be worrisome, bad habits.
I've heard the coaches compliment members of the secondary. They complimented PJ Locke, talked about how much they love him, called his parents, all this stuff. Complimented Deshaun Elliott. I've heard Todd Orlando talk about Deshaun Elliott. I've even heard him talk about Brandon Jones. I've not heard them compliment these corners.
Yeah,
I heard him bring up the corners. Really, you know what I mean? That doesn't mean anything.
That could mean nothing. Could be good or bad.
It doesn't mean a damn thing. Exactly. My point is, if one of them was like overachieving and like that, man, this guy he's shutting him down. This boy Chris Boyd about to be a D.
Right.
He's about to be a Thorpe Award candidate. It's happening. That ain't so I'm assuming that's not happening in practice.
The only thing and I didn't mean to cut you off there, Rod, but just want to throw this out there. The only thing that they've said publicly about the corner position is Tom Herman feels like he's got three guys that if they had to play a game right now, he would trust to be on the field. That's the two starters, Hill and Boyd, and Devontae Davis, who we didn't see because of the shoulder injury.
Yeah, but you don't have a choice. Those are your guys. I mean, what are you going to say? Well, I ain't got a damn thing. I mean, he probably would say that to himself.
But I think
But those are his top guys. Those are just the three best corners on the team.
That tells you kind of where the drop-off between those starters and the backups are right now.
Yeah, so there is no, competition. Those are the guys. And my point is, there hasn't been a competition, really. Right. You know what I mean? Like, those are the three guys. Those are the three guys when we ended last year. Those are the three guys now. They moved John Bunny to safety.
Three guys when we ended 2015.
That's what I'm saying. Those are your three guys. So my point is, how do you get better usually? Competition. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they're competing between the three of them, but I don't know if that competition at cornerback has lifted their play significantly. I'll say that. I think at safety it has, because at safety you infuse a lot of young talent, and I think that, maybe there's been more competition there, and we've seen change. But I don't know if we've seen a lot of competition at corner. Those have been the three guys. We've just been waiting on them to, bloom, essentially. Yeah. And they take a step back, actually. Freshman year, you're like, oh, man, these young corners are going to be like Legion of Boom. And then the sophomore slump. So now we're just waiting on that group again.
And that's where the lessons of the spring game or spring football can come in. It's really like, well, you can really learn if somebody stands out to you or if somebody is not playing well. But there's also a lot of that gray in the middle that you haven't found out yet. But yeah, so that's where that position would be. It'd be nice to have somebody jumping out and being successful, but also we haven't seen somebody just be so deplorable or lose ground to somebody else. Now that could mean because they're all down there together, or it could mean that they're all in that mediocrity. So,
I don't know.
Well, yeah, at least that's the one thing that you can sort of pull from spring is really good, really bad.
That's what makes me worry, though, is that we don't know anything about it. And at safety, they got Jason Hall coming back. You know what I mean? They got a veteran coming back to add to that young crop. So I think they're going to be good. We talked about how deep the linebackers are. PJ Locke's his mom's getting calls from the head coach. They're fine at nickel. You know what I mean?
Which is huge.
D-line, all those things are good. The only question mark on defense right now, in my opinion, is corner. I just don't know about corner. We don't know.
And we talk about preventing the deep ball. Well, if the back end, at least the safeties are getting some praise, and then the nickel, the most key positions, getting some praise. So I would say that if you were to look across the board, you would really want your best successes to come from those positions. So at least if you want to look at the optimistic point of view, you're hearing good things from those very valuable secondary members.
Cornerback has been a rotating, kind of position the last couple of years. It just has been. There's been more stability at safety because of Dylan Haynes and Jason Hall mostly. But the cornerback position has been weird and deep. It's talented, but just no stability really. You know what I mean? Like who's the guy? Last year we were like, we didn't know who was going to start game to game. We had no idea.
And it's weird for
who
Texas
started John Bonnie
because
started,
you had
no idea.
I mean, the 2000s, you had then the Browns.
You had guys start for like 3-4 years. I started for 3 straight years.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to know Rod be out there, Nathan Bash, and those guys. You know what I mean? They started forever.
Yeah.
Now, it's just like, man, we have no idea like who these guys are and who the best corners are. So I think that is my biggest concern. That's why I'm not down. I'm not hating on those guys. So hope this doesn't get back. Oh, Robbie hating on the corners, man. No, I'm not hating on them. I'm just saying we don't know anything about the corners. We don't know what we don't know essentially about the corners. Everything else we feel good about on defense.
Rod, I'm trying to find this. Let me see if I can find this. I want to give you this comparison because I don't want to take – he's my boss, so I don't want to take him out of context. Bobby Burton comparing Chris Boyd to Cedric Griffin. Okay, this is Bobby's take from Monday after Easter Sunday and kind of getting some lingering thoughts on the spring game. Chris Boyd reminds me of Cedric Griffin in some ways. Griffin's first couple of years on campus was a feast or famine quarterback, but he never ever quit being aggressive. That's Boyd to me, and I consider it high praise. Remember, Griffin ended up playing 7 years in the NFL, and that's even after suffering multiple ACL tears.
Okay.
You were around a young Cedric Griffin. Do you see any comparisons, any parallels between Cedric Griffin and what you see from Chris Boyd?
That's really it's about the aggressiveness, the feast or famine thing. Okay. I'm picking up what he's putting down there. Yeah, that's some of that because I remember Cedric Griffin. I remember him. What was he covering? Braylon Edwards in like orange.
Oh, that Rose Bowl against Michigan. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I remember that game for him was kind of a feast or famine game. Go back. He was making plays or getting beat. Yep. It really was like man. And he was drafted in the second round, so obviously he had a ton of talent. So I see what he's saying there. I was not the feast or famine guy. So I understand where Bobby's coming from there. Like I was always trying to be like consistent. I just wanted to be I wanted to be out of the equation, and I wanted my receiver to be out of the equation. I wanted to be a shutdown corner.
Right.
That was it. You know what I mean? I wasn't a ball hawk. All right, I wasn't going to make a lot of plays on the ball. I actually focused more when the ball was thrown on my receiver and making sure he didn't catch the ball. That's probably why I should have made more money. Should have got more picks. A lot of guys, they don't do that. They become the receiver. Nathan Vash, he becomes the receiver. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I always think it's about your style of play. And, for the style of play with a guy like Cedric Griffin, he was just an aggressive corner. So, I can beat him on a little double move. But also, you're going to throw that skinny post, and he's going to be on it. And you thought that he was going to be on his heels a little bit, or he was going to second-guess himself because he got beat on the skinny post 2 times earlier in the first quarter. Nope. You know what I mean? Like that's and some guys they just have that mentality. Short memory. Chris Boyd, he's got a short memory. I didn't have a short memory. I had a long memory, so I had to Rob B can't get beat because I don't think about it the rest of the game. I tried to have a short memory, I just did not. You know, I wasn't good at it. I would think guys who are just kind of you got to have a certain swagger to have a short memory. I don't know if I had enough of that swagger to have a really, really short memory. But it's all about your style of play as a corner, and that's Chris Boyd. He's aggressive, and that's good. And maybe in the Todd Orlando system, we've heard that's one of the key words: aggressiveness, aggressive. So maybe that aggressiveness will play off for him in this particular system.
Yeah, I thought another one that sort of came to my mind was a Shockey Brown type guy, because he has the length, the physicality, and the body type, and also that risk-taking mentality that he just almost a little bit overconfident, but you need to be overconfident, but you don't want to have your overconfidence jeopardize actually your play.
Quandre, you know what? That's because Quandre had an effect on these guys. Quandre was like that.
Yeah.
Quandre was, it wasn't all feast of famine because he had a better baseline.
He was like the mixture.
But you could beat Quandre a few times, and it did not affect Quandre. Like, he stayed aggressive on those routes. You would think, like, he'd get beat on those routes, and you think he'd go, man, he's going to soften up on this coverage. He did not.
Nope.
Josh Doxson in the TCU game, his last game in DKR.
Man.
Those are the type of players you'd love to have.
He kept battling.
He kept battling. At the Baylor game, like when he was young, I think he was like a freshman or sophomore.
Yeah, 2011.
His Baylor game, man, they were just coming after me, and I was like, all right, Quandre's going to back up. Nope. He go right down there and play bumper run again. I'm like, Quandre.
This gave me a flash of Lance Stevenson the other night against LeBron. Just the utter exuberant confidence, just out
irrational confidence at times. And I think some DBs, they just have that. And, yeah, he's one of those guys. So I think maybe that is a little bit of Quandre, wearing Quandre on those guys like, hey, man, you always go balls to the wall. You're going to get – because you know what? And maybe that's the new Big 12 too. You got to have that mentality. Because even the good corners in the Big 12 now, back in my day, you didn't get beat when you was a good corner. Like Terrence Newman never got beat. He got beat like 3 times.
Derek Strait never got beat.
Derek Strait never got beat. I never got beat. You know what I mean? When Quentin Jammer got beat, it was a big deal. Now, the best corners at that corner for Oklahoma, what's his name, Josh Thomas or whatever, the really good one?
Jordan Thomas.
Jordan Thomas. Yeah. He gets beat all the time.
Yeah.
It's like this guy's a first-round prospect. He gets beat on like a quarter of the plays. They thought I'm talking about beat deep, but he makes a ton of plays too. And I think that's the new age that we live in the Big 12. It's like, nah, you're gonna get beat. Just go make some damn plays. And honestly, Chris Boyd might be the guy that just makes plays.
It's the era we live in.
Yeah, Holden Hill makes plays. So yeah, just go make some plays
across
now.
all platforms. Take the risk.
I'm glad I don't have to play in this. I'm glad I don't play in this Big 12 because I would be terrible because I don't have any hands. So I would be taking risks and dropping balls.
You're the conservative old back in my day guy now. That's crazy. It's crazy.
Matt, thanks for everything, man.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Rod B, appreciate the time and the knowledge.
Anytime, brother.
For Matt, for Rod, for Travis, for everybody at AM 1300 The Zone, AM1300thezone.com, where you can hear this podcast each and every week. And thanks to Matt, you get us on iTunes, TuneIn, SoundCloud, and any podcast app.
Yep, just type in Longhorn Blitz.
For the Zone family, for the Horns 24/7 family, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for downloading and listening, and we will catch you again on the next episode.
You've been listening to Longhorn Blitz with Horns247.com.